day, good evening, and hopefully not morning to some. But welcome to our inaugural DPO network meetup. This is the inaugural in that this is after the renaming of the group from our original policy review working group to the policy and practice working group. Uh, Today we'll be having Sharon giving us her review of the book. I believe she did chapter one, so she'll be just giving us her review, and we can afterwards then discuss everything that's on the book or on that chapter. So, just a couple of quick notes. For anyone who's interested in doing the reviews, all you need to do is just indicate which chapter you'd like to review. Two, uh, if you are in need of a book, please indicate if either during this call or afterwards. You can send me a message or send an email to info@dpoafrica.net. And lastly, you as reviewers are not restricted to one any one chapter. You can review as many chapters as possible. Um, as you would like to. Sorry, let me not say as possible, as you would like to. So, without further ado, I'm going to have Sharon take over. Um, Please do have your camera on, Sharon, when you are doing your review. And thank you.
Right. Thank you, Prince. Over here it's evening also, so good evening, everybody. Good morning, if it's morning or afternoon, your time. Okay, yeah, my name is Sharon. So Sharon Okobo, you can call me Sharon. And I was, privileged to be part of the reviewers of this wonderful book. I describe the book as it's when I talk about the book, I just say it's as practical can get, in the sense that as much as it is a textbook, it's also a handbook for implementation and the whole thing regarding implementation of data protection. So we're starting off with chapter one. And chapter one is an intro to the conversation on data protection, data privacy, and security, how it's also can be implemented across organizations. So for this chapter one, it's introduction to data protection. And the objective for this particular chapter is to define data protection and explain how significant it is in modern digital ecosystem, and to also create a distinction or distinguish between data protection, data privacy, and data security, because I know a lot of people have it all mixed up. Some people think data protection and privacy is the same thing. Some people think data security also is the same as data privacy. So this book tries to create that distinction. It also gives us an insight into the historical evolution of data protection and governance regarding data privacy, and the role trust has to play in the digital economy, and how data protection helps in this regard. We also identified the key stakeholders and their responsibilities with respect to data protection. So the chapter starts off by should I say defining, but before we get into the definition of data protection, I know for a couple of years ago, data protection was something like it looks like it was just a conversation for the few privileged and the elites in that space, and it wasn't something everybody, was very familiar with or even willing to talk about or engage in. But as the day progresses, as the days go by, we see how it affects even our personal lives and how everybody must be a part of it. And what's more, in this era, as the book says, data is now called the new oil. So that even makes it's a resourceful tool in the hands of organizations. And because of this, it's also something that individuals should, I'll use the phrase, guard jealously. So the book now starts off by also explaining what data protection is. It's a set of legal frameworks, policies, and practices that are designed to ensure that personal data is handled appropriately throughout its life cycle. Its life cycle being from the point of collection, every processing activity done, up until the time it is deleted or destroyed, or even archived. So everything in that process, data protection is essentially the set of legal frameworks. So that includes your GDPR, your data protection acts, every regulations and guidelines that have designed to ensure that personal data is handled appropriately. So at the core of data protection is trying to balance two competing interests. That is the legitimate need of organizations and to collect and process personal information, and the fundamental rights of the individuals to control information about themselves. Because oftentimes people talk about data protection, focus is just put on the privacy, the individual, how they are supposed to protect his rights. But then to an extent, it also not just says obligations of organizations to protect the privacy rights of these individuals. People tend to forget to also address what these organizations should do to actually even acknowledge that there is a need in the first place for these individual organizations to collect this data. So that's what data protection does. It tries to balance out these two needs, hence the regulations and the policies and frameworks. So in balancing out these two competing interests, there are key dimensions, like three major components, yes, that are addressed. That is establishing the legal rights for individual, and in this case, they are called data subjects over their personal data. So the data protection puts in certain rights these individuals have over their data. That's rights to access the data, rights to correct any inaccuracies, rights to even demand to know why you are collecting my data, how it is going to be processed, and all of that. Then data protection also imposes obligations on organizations to ensure that while they are processing data, it is done in a lawful and fair manner. So some of these obligations imposed include, accountability, demanding that organizations implement security measures, that they also demonstrate accountability for how their data, the data subjects information will be processed. Then the third dimension now involves regulatory oversight, because if we have the laws and the data subject knows the law, the organization knows the obligation, data subject knows the right, and there is nobody to ensure that it is actually being implemented, then I'm not sure the job has been completely done. So this book also introduces, or rather brings to our attention, that third dimension, which is regulatory oversight and enforcement mechanisms. some of these enforcement mechanisms include having regulators like the Kenya's Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. For Nigeria, it is the Nigerian Data Protection Commission. I even heard recently, I can't remember the name of the African country that recently also, I think that was last week, set up their own commission for enforcement of data protection rights and obligations. So these are all some of the enforcement mechanisms, having a way, a complaint procedure, an investigation procedure, requirements for conduct of audits, sanctions, and all of that. So it's the book goes further to then just states in closing, as for like the introduction part, that data protection frameworks recognize that data can be processed for legitimate reasons. So it is not about saying do not process the data, because it's not something that can be helped in this digital era. So data protection frameworks acknowledge, they understand that there is need to process this data, but what it insists on is that the processing must be done with respect to the individual's rights. It must uphold fairness, and it must minimize risks. So we go on to the evolution or the history of data privacy up to the present digital age. And we see that data protection has its roots sometime in 1890, where some American lawyers published an article titled "The Right to Privacy." And the article essentially was saying that individuals should have the right to be let alone. I did not know this until I read the book. And the concern or the major focus of this, or the concern that gave birth to the article was, with the rise of cameras and intrusive journalism, people saw the need to they saw the need to put this work together to state that privacy is a fundamental right to people, for individuals. And then this sort of like laid the groundwork for future developments in data privacy. And it really does make sense, because with the way the digital age is now, Instagram, you can just be doing whatever, minding your business, and somebody has already taken a video of you. You see yourself on Instagram without you being aware of what's going on. So that gave birth to the discussions and the work around data protection. And then that moved on to 1948, mid 20th century, when we had the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which the UN adopted in 1948. And it has an Article 12 that no one should be subject to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence. So it further upheld privacy as a fundamental human right. From the UN, from this declaration, from this declaration, we now started seeing like movements towards like there were other, should I say, regional bodies now started enacting laws and charters around data protection. And we see in 1981, the Council of Europe's Convention 108 was adopted, and it became the first binding international instrument on data protection. So they established some of the fundamental principles that we have today, which is that data should be collected for a specific purpose, it should be kept accurate and up to date, and it should be protected against unauthorized access. Following that, and the rise of the internet and all of that, it became necessary that there should also be some sort of change or adjustments in the data protection and privacy landscape. And We had the European Union's Data Protection Directive of 1995 that tried to harmonize data protection laws across member states. And from there, we had the GDPR, which was adopted by the European Union in 2016. And from there, other countries now began to see the need for data privacy and data protection and started enacting. So we had the ones from Brazil, California, we had from Nigeria, Kenya, other African countries started, enacting their own data protection laws so that just to uphold the privacy rights of individuals and provide a framework within which individuals' data will be processed. So why is this important? Why is it necessary that countries and regional governments or bodies go through all this hassle to ensure that there's data protection put in place? And why should organizations or individuals, for that matter, even pay attention to it? So the first thing the book has is, first and foremost, protecting fundamental human rights and human dignity. This is a right that cannot be ignored. And to tell you how important it is, it's entrenched in constitutions of most nations. It's in the Nigerian constitution, and also there's a right to privacy which can only be infringed upon on certain specific instances. But apart from that, the data protection is important to uphold this fundamental human right, the ability to control information about oneself. It's according to the book says it is intrinsically linked to personal freedom. If I can't control how much information about myself is out there, then my personal freedom and liberty is probably at stake. If I can't say, don't process my data in this manner, or I don't have any say or control over my data, then my personal liberty and freedom is at stake. Or when it is, it is now manipulated, or based on my personal information or data, I am now discriminated upon, or they're exploited, then these fundamental rights, it now becomes trampled upon. So data protection is important to uphold these fundamental rights. The second reason the book has is for building and maintaining trust. In this economy, in this era now, in the digital economy, it is very important for organizations that individuals actually trust them to handle their personal data responsibly. And like I tell some clients, it's not just the individuals or the users even trusting you. It's also important for investment. I hope I'm not jumping. Okay, but yeah, it's also important for investment because now investors are also considering other things, not just the financial gains from their investments. So they need to be able to trust that as an organization, the data, which is an asset that comes into your custody, that you are able to handle it responsibly. Because if people think that you are not going to be able to do that, they will be reluctant to engage with your digital services or share information or participate in the online economy. And now that it is very important that for products that are built, products that companies build, you need information like person's name, some certain data for that product to even, be said to be solving any particular need. But if you've built a product and people think, or maybe you've built a reputation for misusing people's data, others will be discouraged from engaging with your product or your services. So any organization that demonstrates strong data protection practices can build trust as a competitive advantage against similar organizations in similar industries or markets. The third reason why this is important and data protection is important is that it also enables innovation and economic growth. Startups consider, or maybe recently they started, rethinking this, but maybe some 2 years ago or some 3 years ago, startup would think data protection conversation is just a way to slow down growth, or that it will slow down innovation or whatever it is that they are building. But far from it, it's something that can actually enable it if it goes back again to trust. If the individuals believe that you can handle my data responsibly, then they'll be willing to share more information. They'll be willing to participate in research. They'll be willing to engage with new technology, and that will ultimately make your products better, give you ideas on needs in the society that you can, should I say, you can develop solutions for. So if data protection is not just is not something that will stall growth, rather it will help growth. So things like conversations like privacy enhancing technologies and privacy by design approaches will ultimately lead to better products and better services. The next case for data protection is that it also prevents discrimination and promotes fairness, in the sense that people's data are used to make decisions that will affect their lives, from things that from credits, approvals, insurance, employment opportunities, and access to certain things. If these decisions are made using incomplete, inaccurate, or biased data, then they can perpetuate or even amplify discrimination. So that this even now touches on one of the principles that I guess you see as you continue to read in the book, principles about making sure that the data you collect is accurate and complete and all of that. I know I heard of a story somewhere, I think in the US or the UK, where they needed to check for the people living in a particular area to ensure, to know whether to approve a rent increase. Because I think the rent thing around there has to also do with earning capacity. And those people, after they use like some technology to do the checks and analyze data, and they said, okay, I think they can increase rent. And they came back, they got a feedback from the people that know that they are not happy with the fact that it was an AI or a technology-based decision that that they used to make that decision, and they had to do everything afresh, even though they still arrived at the same decision. So it's something also that helps when data protection principles are put in place. You know that, okay, it's able to come to this decision and not be found as discriminatory. I have to get complete data. I have to make sure that they are correct and all of that. So that's one of the reasons why data protection is important. It also supports democratic values and social cohesion. So now we get into the distinction that I had mentioned earlier, a distinction between data protection, privacy, and security. Like I said, people usually think, oh, the three of them can be used what's the word? It's not simultaneously. You can use either of them in place of the other. So, but this book provides clarity on what each term actually means. So, data protection, like it had said earlier, is just encompasses legal frameworks, policies, and practices designed to ensure personal data is handled appropriately. Privacy, on the other hand, is the individual's right. So data privacy is the individual's right to control how information about him or her and and to make decisions about how that information is collected, used, and shared. Then data security refers to technical and organizational measures implemented to protect data from unauthorized access alteration, disclosure, and destruction. So for me, the way I made it easy for me to understand or to, internalize was data protection, laws, regulation, privacy, individual, data security, organization. So with this, I just knew, okay, this is how I'm going to explain it to somebody if the person, asked that information. So privacy is the right of the individual to control their own data. Security is the measures put in place by organizations to ensure that that individual's data is not accessed or altered or disclosed or destroyed without authorization. Data protection is the law that provides for the rights and for the obligations of the individual. Then moving on to, the book even helps also so that you can understand. Privacy is a fundamental right. Data protection is the legal and governance framework that operationalizes that right. And data security is the technical safeguards necessary to implement data protection requirements. So yeah, and then yes, okay. So we move on to understanding the role of trust in the digital economy. I know we had mentioned earlier as one of the reasons why data protection is important is that it's, to build trust, to build trust. So why is this important? Everything is now being digitalized accounts from accounts to from banking to insurance to just normal consumer access to consumer services, buying, selling, ordering food. Everything is now being done online. There is one mobile app or the other for it. People take a lot of pictures and all. So they need to be sure that your product, your solution, your application is something is reliable in the sense of that you can process their data reasonably. And the book also states here that the relationship between data protection and trust operates in both directions. Strong data protection practices build trust by demonstrating that an organization takes its responsibilities reasonably. And then trust enables data sharing and engagement, which are necessary for many digital services to function effectively. So it's like a vicious cycle. The organization invests in data protection to earn trust, which in turn helps them provide better services. And these better services they are able to provide is because users are now trust them to engage them. So as they provide better services, it strengthens trust, and so they just keep on. The moment an organization lets the ball drop on data protection and implementing security measures, trust drops. So they work hand in hand. And this ultimately translates to some economic value for the organization. If consumers trust you, trust your organization, trust your product and your service, they are willing to pay more than somebody else offering the same service. But because they know that, oh, you will do right by me with respect to my services and with respect to my data, they would choose you over the other. And that would also mean increased revenue. On the same hand, on the same, pedestal, where an organization lets the ball drop on data protection and thereby reducing people's trust and confidence in them, it will ultimately lead to not just revenue loss, but fines. So there is this case study, this example that the book has, that is the British Airways that data breach that resulted in 20 million euros euros or pounds fine from the UK Information Commissioner's Office and damage to the airline's reputation. So there is no trust without data protection. And if you want increased revenue in this day, you need to implement data protection. Again, if you don't want to lose money, you need to pay attention to data protection. So, to build this trust, you need to, like I said, yeah, put in the work in data protection, implementing data protection, and this is done through, transparency and accountability. Let people know what you want to use that as an organization, what you want to use their data for, how we are going to use their data. Will you be sharing this data with another person? Because I think that's where many organizations default. They tell you what they are going to do, how they're going to do it, but they don't disclose to you that they're going to be sharing your data with another organization. And then when there is a leak or something, trust falls, people can sue the organization for breach, or even the commissions, the regulators, fine you for breach. You've lost money, you've lost revenue, you've lost confidence and people's confidence in you, and your reputation is damaged in that particular industry. So there's the example we have here is Cambridge Analytica, and which is their the privacy failures that one of the examples of privacy failures that we have in this digital age. So Cambridge Analytica is a British political consulting firm specialized in data analytics and strategic communication. So sometime in 2014, the company got people's data from Facebook through a personality quiz, and they got the data. They actually got consent from people to take this quiz. But what they now did after this was they went to the app, harvested the data of those people's Facebook friends without their knowledge or consent, and collected about 87 million information of about 87 million users. And the violation here is on different levels. No, it is not. What they've done was not, there's no legal basis for what they did because there was no consent. They had also violated the principle of purpose limitation, which says that what you only limit the use or processing of that data to that specific purpose that you had disclosed to the data subject. And then they failed to be transparent. They didn't tell the users or even those people that even consented to the quiz initially that they were going to be using their data for other certain things. So those were like some of the violations on all of these levels. And the consequence was that they were fined $5 billion from the US Federal Trade Commission. One, Facebook's stock price at that time plummeted, and billions of dollars were lost in market value. And of course, nobody else will see anything from Cambridge Analytica again and say, let me click on that link. So they lost a lot on different fronts. So that's what happens where you ignore, as an organization, you ignore data protection, and you lose the trust of people. So what should organizations learn from this? First, consent is non-negotiable, except for instances where maybe the law says you can do this without consent. But consent is non-negotiable. The person you're collecting their data, his or her data, must be informed of the purpose of collection, what you're collecting, and all of that. And this consent you've received, based on this information you've given, that's when they can now give consent. The consent must be informed, which is that they know why you're collecting, how you're processing, who you're sharing the data with. And the consent must be specific. So it is not they didn't say no, they say yes. Did they tick that box? The fact that they just went ahead doesn't really amount to consent. And was the consent freely given? Was it given under duress? Did you give this person an option to even say no? Did you attach consequences to not saying yes? So all of these things will be considered. And then so you have to collect people's consent before you use their data. You have to be responsible as an organization, not just for your own data practices, but for that of third parties. So when you engage third parties to take any action on the data that you have collected as an organization, you are also responsible for what they do. You have to ensure that as much as you, the organization, is upholding data protection laws and principles, that third party is also doing the same thing. And then you also have to know that the potential for harm from data misuse extends beyond individual privacy to include threats to democratic processes and social cohesion. And then transparency and accountability are essential. They are it's very, very important. I think that's even one of the reasons we also have the audits and all of that. And then lastly, you see that violations attract severe business consequences. The charge is no longer in thousands, and you cannot even say, yes, this is the specific amount, because some organizations can do that and say, what is it going to cost us if we do this? And they say, oh, it's $1 million. Okay, we can spare $1 million. But it goes beyond that. It can be anything. It can ground operations to a halt, and you lose money, revenue, and all of that. Okay, I'm probably going to okay, sorry, give me a moment. So now, just rounding up, the book also, chapter 1 comes, closes with identifying common pitfalls and practical tips that are necessary as you begin your data protection journey. The first pitfall is treating data protection as purely a legal or compliance issue. Just saying, okay, let's tick the box. Have we done it? We've done it. Okay, let's move on. So that's what most companies do. All through the year, they don't care about, let me not say most companies, but some companies, all through the year, they don't care about data protection, implementing any security measures. And then in the Nigerian scenario, March 31st is approaching for audits. Let's quickly do the audits. Just tick, 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 and you get the compliance certificate. But data protection has evolved from purely a legal or compliance issue. So the approach for organizations should not just be a box ticking exercise. If not, they will miss opportunities to create value and they will expose themselves to risk. The second pitfall is assuming that security equals privacy. This was one of the things that really jumped at me when I was reviewing initially. I even talked about it on my LinkedIn, that security is not privacy. Some companies, when you have conversations with them, and they'll say, they have security measures in place, nobody can access the data and all of that. But you're not processing people's data with respect for their private fundamental rights to privacy. You are violating their right to, you're not being transparent on what you are doing with the data, how you're processing that data. You are collecting much more data than you need. And this is in violation of data protection principles. So the fact that I have security measures in place doesn't necessarily mean that I am upholding the principles of data protection or that I am upholding this individual's privacy rights. It goes beyond having the lock and key to also ensuring that while you have that data, you are being responsible in its use and processing. The third pitfall is collecting data just in case it is useful later. While some, they'll consider it as for maybe it will cut cost for them. It is quicker. Let's just collect as much as we need. you violate the principles of data minimization, which says that you should collect only data that is necessary for specified purposes. If you go beyond this and collect, any and all, you just need to, let's say it's taking attendance. All you need is my thumbprint. That's it. That's the biometric data. And you go ahead to start asking me to give you my blood group, my genotype, and you say maybe in future I might need this in future for something else, so let me not have to go back again with them. You are breaching certain data protection principles. Also, another pitfall is failing to consider data protection early in projects, waiting until you are about to deploy before you now start. Some don't even think about it. It's after deployment and people start using and then start raising questions before they say, okay, let us draft a privacy policy or let us do this one. But from the moment of ideation, from the moment the idea comes to mind, organizations should start thinking of data protection, should start thinking of how to preserve or data subjects privacy rights and embed it in the products that they are building or in the services that they are rendering. The fourth pitfall is underestimating the importance of documentation. This is the principle of accountability that requires organizations to demonstrate compliance. Have your documentations. This will help to reduce, or to even help you in risk assessment and making decisions as little as deciding whether to go, with this third-party service provider or the other, whether to include this particular, should I say, widget or whatever. If you had documentation in the past, you will know, okay, what risk does this pose? But if you don't have any documentation to rely on, you just make decisions on a whim, on uninformed decisions that might end up posing a risk for the organization. So what should you do? Start with why. Before collecting any personal data, ask why you need this data. What specific purpose will this data serve? Is there any other way I can do this without collecting this data? 2, make privacy everyone's responsibility. This is so important because now that we have data protection officers in organization, it seems like they are the only ones, and maybe IT personnel, that should be thinking of data. But if you make data privacy everyone's responsibility within your organization, it helps, for effective data protection implementation from the top down to the frontline staff. And then also 3, think like a data subject. When you are designing systems or drafting policies, put yourself in the data subjects too, because actually you are actually a data subject. If I happen to use this your product, how will it affect me as a data subject? And it's even better because you are inside, you are the one developing this. There are certain things the data subject cannot see, might not see, that might affect. So if you are the data subject that happens to be using this, how will you feel if you came into the knowledge of certain information or certain things that the company is doing that will affect their rights? Would you think this is fair? Is this transparent enough? Is it respectful? Then build relationship with regulators. If this is not something you just do in isolation, do this with regulators. They're not there to, be the stumbling block that will make your operations to fall, because some companies, I should stop using most, some companies consider regulators as the clog in the wheel of innovation and all of that. But if your relationship is managed properly, regulators will actually provide the guidance that you need and even offer resources. I know the NDPC here, they're actually quite helpful. When you call it, I have questions and all of that, they would take you through, help you understand what you should do, what you shouldn't do. I've had a couple of times I've had to call them to get clarity on certain things, or even maybe during audit process, and they're quite helpful. So do not avoid regulators, but build relationships with them and learn from others' mistakes. You don't have to make the mistake first before you learn from it. There are many stories, many examples of data breaches of different kinds that you can learn from. And when you are building your solutions, your products, your processes within your organization, you can say, oh, these people did this and it resulted to this. So we shouldn't do the same thing. So, in summary, we've talked about the fundamental concepts of data protection and why it matters in this digital world. We've also, talked about the evolution of privacy from just a mere philosophical concept to a legal right that is protected by laws and regulations and enforced by regulators. We've distinguished between data protection, privacy, and security, and examined the role trust has to play in this digital economy. So I think that's all. I feel like I took too much time, but yes. I don't know, any questions or comments? I think, I don't know, Prince, are you taking that or should I continue?
I'm actually checking. No, just waiting for comments or messages. Maybe people are so amazed by your presentation. No, I'll be honest. The way you presented was really, really great. it's really, for me, it reignited my wanting to read the book from the beginning. Like, am I really not reading enough? So I told myself I actually have to now. I will go through the first chapter as because what you gave, the insights you gave were quite. I am not exaggerating, out of this world, and I think the what was best is you've made it so conversational. It was easy to relate. I enjoyed that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Prince. Thank you.
Maybe we'll assume people aren't don't have questions. Anyone with a question? Contribution?
Right, so it's just a comment from Izuna.
Oh,
No
okay.
question. Thank you.
Oh, it was not a question, but it was an awesome breakdown, easy to listen to. See, I'm not alone.
Thank you.
Okay. So I guess what we can do is we say thank you, Sharon, for that really, really insightful presentation.
Thank you.
I genuinely was amazed by what she put out. I'm actually thinking how I can even come and just present anywhere as good as this. But it was beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Then I'll just do a couple of announcements and then we'll just wrap this up. So, for anyone out there who's interested, let me do this. Okay, I'll just leave you on. Right now the controls are. Anyone who's interested, we have the CIPPE class that's every Sunday at 9 p.m. WAT, I think. So anyone interested, you can join that class. And anyone also planning on writing, please remember we also have a partnership with 𝗁𝗂𝗃, where there's discounts for everything, including a one up to a 1 year membership with the IAP. So do get in touch. You can reach out for if you want to join the class, and you can also reach out if you want to uh, get more information on the 𝗁𝗂𝗃 partnership. Just email on info@dpoafrica.net, and you can get more info on all of the above. With that, I would like to say thank you, Sharon, for your presentation, and thank you to everyone for attending and being part of this meeting. And Sharon, trust me with how good this was, it will be up on YouTube as soon as possible. People, you will be sending links to the group tomorrow, definitely. So everyone, thank you for your time and your attendance, and let's keep sharing and helping each other and keep growing this community. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye, everybody.